Andrew Cohen, welcome to the Bob Pizzini Show.
Looking forward to talking with you, Bob.
That's great. Hey, thank you so much for coming on. And I like to I like to set a foundation so my guests know how it is that you and I are having this discussion. And I attended a keynote that Andrew gave probably over a year ago um, at one of the universities in our area. And the keynote and the story that he shared was incredible. A lot of it around the time when he worked for Bernie Madoff. But there's so many other aspects to the story and so many other aspects to Andrew Cohen. I thought immediately, wow, he'd make a great podcast guest. And here we are, one short year later, and we've got you on the show. What I like to do is introduce the individual first. So I've already read your bio, so we know of your many accomplishments, but we all become who we are in our childhood. And can you tell us a little bit about where you grew up and what that was like?
So I grew up in the northeast part of the Bronx, a very lower middle class neighborhood, kind of a rough neighborhood. And I was born in 1964, so my development years were in the 1970s when New York City and the Bronx in particular was kind of a rough place. It was kind of a rough environment. So I had to become pretty streetwise. So that kind of developed me in that, it taught me, how to protect myself. It was also the schools weren't the best. There was, fighting. At one point I would go to school with a knife. So it was kind of a rough. It was a rough neighborhood, and it toughened me up. It in a lot of ways that helped develop me.
Did you have a scrap or two, like during
Oh
your high school
yeah,
years?
yeah. I had many, and the funny thing. I mean, the thing is, you had to do that to kind of so people wouldn't bother you. If you let someone, there's
Yeah,
always bullies and bigger kids, and I was a smaller kid, and I was a year ahead. So I was like in my class, I was generally a year and a half younger than everyone else. So I had to kind of act a little crazy to kind of, protect myself. And I took some martial arts, but because I remember I was getting bullied, and then I this big kid, and I hit him really hard. Anyway, so
nice.
just don't mess with that little crazy kid, So
You
you
want to
have
make
to
that
do
guy
stuff like
famous? You
that.
want to say his name?
No, no, no need to.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, good. Well done. Well, that definitely helps shape character and toughness. And did you play sports during that time?
Yeah, I loved sports, and that was interesting too because, when because I was a lot of my friends in the neighborhood were like I was the tail end of the baby boomers, so a lot of the kids that were 2, 3, 4 years older than me, and so I'd play sports with them, and so it was good and bad. The bad thing is, like, I didn't think I was any good. It's just because they were older and bigger than me, but because I played against them, I got really good. So I didn't know that I was a good athlete until later on when I started playing in leagues like with kids my own age. And
What
suddenly I said,
sport?
wow, because now all of a sudden I felt like the superstar. Where before I was like one of the last kids picked because all the other kids were older. And then I became
Yeah.
one of the better players.
What's playing what sport?
So in high school, I played baseball, I played basketball. That was the main. I played tennis. Yeah, so I was in baseball by my junior year. I got really good. I was the center fielder, leadoff hitter. So I was really good in
Nice.
baseball. And basketball, I was on the bench. My height was a big deterrent in basketball. I was always the shortest kid on the team, but it was fun. And
Yeah.
the other thing, the way it shaped me, because I was smaller and younger, it really made me have to think a lot. Like when I played basketball, I wasn't going to overpower people, so I learned to use both my right and left hand equally. So I would use more trickery and I would work harder than everyone else and try and be quicker. And
Yeah.
so I had to use my intelligence more than my athletic prowess to succeed.
And it sounds like a work ethic as well. You were willing to put in the work.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because I always had this grit and determination to win, and so I definitely, I wasn't a born natural athlete that everything came easy, so I had to work hard at it.
Yeah, got it. How about jobs? Did you have a job in high school?
Yeah, a little bit. Now we deliver the paper sometimes, little jobs like that. When I went to college, I started working. I working almost like part time, almost full time while I was going to school. And I remember my first job that I really enjoyed. I loved being a waiter. I was a waiter, and it was fun. Because it was a great social thing. You met people and actually loved like being a waiter and serving people and talking to people. And I was really good at it.
Oh, that's cool. And so you did that high school going into college?
In college, I did that.
Okay. And
Yeah.
what school did you go to?
So I went to SUNY Binghamton, and for me, one of the reasons I chose it there, I got a partial scholarship. I was valedictorian in my high school, and I could have gone to other schools like Harvard or somewhere like that, but my parents were relatively poor, and so I didn't want to financially burden them. So SUNY Binghamton was the top state school in New York. It was very affordable. I think tuition at the time was like $3,500 or even less. And I worked, and I got like a partial scholarship, and then I worked. So my parents never had to lay out a dime for my college.
Yeah, that's great. And then what did you study there?
So I got into the School of Management, and I had no idea what I wanted to really do there. I loved the psychology courses, and then I loved the stock market courses. So I started learning about investing, and I fell in love with that. And so that's kind of how I mean, really knew nothing about Wall Street when I went to college, but then in learning about the financial markets, then I thought, wow, that would be exciting to get a job on Wall Street.
Okay. Well, I've heard the story before and it's fascinating, but tell us about how you got your job on Wall Street.
Sure. So, I had done very well in college, always, pretty much straight A student. And I thought I was a really good speaker. And so when I put my resume in, I would usually get at least a job interview. And I had a couple of job offers. And then the Goldman Sachs came to interview at SUNY Binghamton. And this was like the creme de la creme. So I was really excited about that. I made sure to tailor my resume, get in early to our career development center. And, this was the job I really wanted. And I was very confident I would at least get an interview. The interview day comes, I look at the list, I'm not on there. I was like, what the heck? I was really surprised and disappointed. And so I could have just thrown in the towel, but I was like curious, like why I didn't get picked. So it turned out the career development center somehow had misplaced my resume. So the lady, I'll never forget her name, Dee Owen, was the Goldman Sachs recruiter. She had never got my resume. So I called her like 2 or 3 times. So finally I think she didn't even answer. And then I went to where the interview was and I kind of waylaid her in between interviews and said, hey, I just want to let you know, I would love to get an opportunity at Goldman Sachs. I've read so much about, I tried to impress her. And I said, is there any way you could fit me in for an interview? And she goes, look, I'm really sorry. I'm booked. This is, all why did, and I explained what happened. And she said, sorry, nothing I could do, but and another friend of mine, the same thing happened to him. So the two of us persistently called finally, probably just to get rid of us. She agreed to give both of us an interview if on our own dime, we went down to New York to Goldman Sachs. So we both in different times went down there. And when I went down there, I had a great interview with her. I was really, again, so much preparation. I read so many things about Goldman Sachs, so she was really impressed. I remember at the end of the interview, because she came in wanting to blow me off because she was annoyed at my, persistence and annoying her. She's like, all right, look, despite myself, I can see you're a really good candidate, so I'm going to put you on for further interviews. And then staying there the whole day. By the end of the day, I took a lie detector test and all this stuff. So I knew that they were either going to put me in jail or give me an offer. And since I wasn't a criminal, I figured they would give me a job offer. And sure enough, a few days later, I got the offer at Goldman Sachs.
That's great. And how old were you at that point, and how long were you with Goldman Sachs?
So when I was interviewing, I think I was still 20 years old. And when I got hired at Goldman, I was 21. I graduated, I was 21 years old. And so I went through their training program, which was great, learned a lot about the business. While at Goldman at night, I got into prestigious NYU, New York University Stern School of Business. So at night I would get my MBA. Goldman Sachs paid for it as long as, I think they paid 100% for A or A minus, 75% for Bs, 50% for Cs, and they didn't pay below that. So I had an incentive to do well. But I was there from 1985 through 1991. After I got my master's degree, I wanted to then switch I was in management by that time, and I wanted to go into trading.
Okay. And then, so that's a rigorous schedule. You're working full-time at Goldman Sachs, and you're pursuing a graduate degree, which is a full-time job unto itself. And you were and you still are physically active. You're in great physical shape. I see the climbing wall behind you there, which not many people have a climbing wall in their residence. But how did you, how did you maintain the energy and the mental focus? I mean, there's brain power and brain energy, and there's physical energy. And this is back when people weren't paying attention to that. How did you keep all that stitched together?
Yeah, it was honestly tough, especially the first few years were really tough because the first years I didn't have any money. So I lived in like kind of a rough part. Well, I lived in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, which now apparently is, it's like become like $1 million house place. When I was there, it was very poor. And the point is, though, I had to take 3 different trains just to get to work. So it was a real hassle. So, it was a long commute. I was sharing a 1 bedroom with 2 other people. I was sleeping on the couch initially. So it was really hard. I was always tired, but I did a couple of things that I always tell my students. When I went to school, like I would work, when I went to school, no matter how tired I was, I always made sure I sat in one of the first rows. And I always made sure that I would try to ask an intelligent, interesting question. And so while in class, by doing that, people would look at me, you get the adrenaline rush and it gets you motivated to focus. And so that was kind of one of my little hacks to be awake so I could do well in school. And because I didn't have a lot of time to study after school, I made sure to really focus and understand everything while the teacher taught it. So that was kind of my trick. If I didn't understand something, I would raise my hand and ask it right then. So that but when I left the class and then on the trains going back, I would study and review my notes and everything else. So I was always very efficient. I wouldn't waste time. And then as I made more money, got promotions. And I was also, I got into this high stakes poker game with Goldman Sachs traders. So I became a really good poker player. So that gave me a lot of supplemental income, which helped me afford better apartments. So I remember I moved from Greenpoint to Park Slope. Park Slope was, I think it was one stop with a long walk. Not one stop, one train ride, like 7 stops with a long walk. And eventually I made enough money to move so I could walk to work. And I moved to Battery Park City. So now I could walk to Goldman Sachs on Wall Street and walk to NYU, which at that time was downtown. They've since moved uptown. And so, but that was one of my hacks. And, and I was focused and tried to take courses that I liked.
Yeah.
But it was tough. I sacrificed a lot of my social life.
Yeah, for sure. So you were willing to sacrifice social life. A lot of people aren't willing to do that. You also were very conscious of time management, and you really took advantage of that resource. And then in military intelligence, we have something that we call atmospherics. And it's just understanding the environment that you're in. And it sounds like you really had great awareness of the environment and you maneuvered your way through it, ultimately sustaining a portion of that by playing poker, winning at poker, I guess. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so Goldman Sachs, how long were you there, and what came after that?
Yeah, so I was at Goldman Sachs from 1985 through 1991. And while I was there, I got my MBA. I got a bunch of promotions. My last promotion, I became a manager and I was moved over to the J. Aaron division at the time, foreign exchange. And I realized that I hated being a manager. I think I was good at it. People resented me because I was younger than a lot of people that worked for me. And again, what was I? When I left, I was 27. So I was a manager from like the age of 25 to 27. Most people working for me were, a little older. They kind of resented it. And I wanted to get in the trading part. I was meant to trade, not to manage. And so what came out of it? Well, it was hard to move laterally trading, but then I started interviewing outside of Goldman Sachs. And then that leads to the next story. If you want me to go into the next
story.
No,
get there. Now this has something to do with the building, right? You were in the wrong building, or you ran into somebody in the building. Please go ahead and tell that part of the story. How you left Goldman Sachs and joined the next team.
Okay, sure. All right. So this is kind of a crazy story. All right. So I started interviewing other places, and I wanted to stay downtown. My life was downtown, and I got a job offer at a foreign exchange trading company called Refco. And it actually would have been at the top of the World Trade Center. The World Trade Center I'd go through all the time. I actually enjoyed the World Trade Center. Goldman Sachs, we had all of our Christmas parties there. It's called Top of the World, Windows of the World. There was beautiful. So anyway, so I get I get an offer there, and it's just contingent on taking a drug test. Since I don't use drugs, I'm a health fanatic, I'm not worried about that. In the meantime, I had a couple other opportunities. One was with a little boutique trading firm called Bernard Madoff Investment Securities. And so I went there and I met with Andy and Mark Madoff, who were about my age at the time. They were in their 20s. And I didn't know a lot about their firm, but I had good meetings with them too. And it just so happened and so I gave my notice to Goldman Sachs, said, I'm leaving, I'm going to be joining. I told them I got an offer at Refco. So I just got to take this drug test. So it just so happens by coincidence, the day of the drug test, I had my final interview at Madoff with Peter Madoff, Bernie Madoff's younger brother. And he was at that time running the trading floor. Mark and Andy Madoff worked kind of for Peter. Peter worked for Bernie. Later, Mark and Andy ran the trading floor. So I go there, and I didn't want to blow Peter off, so I went there just out of curiosity. And Peter was a big talker. It was a weird interview. He asked me so many questions. Interesting. He asked me a lot about my childhood, and he wanted to know my psychological makeup. So the interview lasted over an hour. And finally, I was trying to be rude, but I had to rush down to get to take my drug test time. And Bernie Madoff's office, the Madoff Securities, is in the Lipstick Building, 53rd and 3rd. Refco, where I was taking my drug test, is downtown. So I'm really hungry. And so I go take the subway to get downtown. And right before the subway, there's this bagel stand, fresh hot bagels. I love bagels. By the way, this was 1991. This is before we knew that carbs were bad for us. Okay?
Okay.
We didn't know carbs were bad, so I don't eat much bagels anymore. But I love bagels at the time. And we didn't know anything about poppy seeds. Okay, I'll leave it at that. So I like bagels. It just so happened the fresh batch was poppy seed bagels. A guy did hot poppy seed bagels. So I grabbed a poppy seed bagel, paid the guy like whatever, it was like 60 cents at the time. And I grabbed the munch on the bagel, again, be time efficient, as I get on the subway and eat this big poppy seed bagel. I go down and take my drug test. And on their drug testing, there's absolutely nothing about, did you eat poppy seeds? If you ever use drugs, blah, blah. Of course not. No. I think I just peed in a cup. That was the extent of the drug test, right?
Uh-huh.
So then I wait, and Madoff calls back, wanting to know if, and I was kind of getting ready to respond that I'm going to accept something else. But it's weird because I don't hear from Refco. And like 3-4 days go by, I'm like, that's strange. So I called up. I actually had an executive recruiter who had set up the Refco thing. So I call her up and say, what's going on, Refco? I'm anxious to start. I'm ready to start. What's going on? She calls back and says, Andrew, I'm sorry. I have some really bad news for you. What? Well, you failed your drug test and Refco is rescinding the offer. I thought it was a joke. I thought one of my friends played a joke. I said, how can I fail a drug test? I've never used drug in my life. And I know I got friends who they're getting high, they're doing stuff, and they're passing drug tests. I'm like the only guy I know that never uses any drugs. I don't even drink. Why? How could I fail a drug test? And so, but they said, well, you tested positive. I didn't test. I tested positive for an opiate, some kind of opiate. And I was like, opiate? I don't even know. How do you even get opium around here? Isn't it somewhere in Southeast Asia? I wouldn't even know where to get opium. They said, it must be, maybe my urine sample got mixed with someone else. Let me just retake it and I'll clear myself. And they wouldn't do anything. So I start calling my friends. I have one of my friends, my friend Charlie, who worked at Pfizer at the time. And he asked me a question. He goes, did you happen to eat any poppy seeds? And I'm like, yeah, I ate a poppy seed bagel, but what does that have to do with anything? And he explains to me that how poppy seeds can give a false positive for an opiate. It's derivative from and he explains it, the technical thing. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Well, I did eat a poppy seed bagel. Maybe that's what did it. And so the only time I ever sued anyone, because Refco won't budge. So I ended up accepting the job at Madoff. And I have a couple of good buddies of mine that are lawyers. And it's funny, I always make a lot of lawyers jokes. I generally don't, avoid lawyers, but so they take my case and they end up suing Refco for, well, one, I want to clear my name. I don't want my name being associated. So they end up forcing Refco to give me a whole new drug test this time they looked me over head to toe and they realized that I've never used drugs. They did the hair thing, all kinds of stuff.
Wow.
And they ended up paying a settlement because Refco's offer was higher than Madoff's. And so I ended up getting good amount of money from Refco. And I go to Madoff and immediately become a superstar there, become like their star trader. So initially it looked like, wow, I was lucky. I made a great I go up to a place, I'm loving trading there, and life is great for a while.
So interesting. You went to Madoff, and of course, for people who aren't familiar with Bernie Madoff and the world's most famous Ponzi scheme, you can Google it, you can look it up, and I'm sure Andrew's going to tell us a little bit about it. But you said you went to Madoff and became a superstar right away.
Well, not right away, but I mean, I started working with Andy, but soon enough, I got my own account. I started making a lot of money.
Yeah.
It was a great life.
But where I'm going with that is, how did you do that? And I know because I know you, and you and I have talked. I know that you did not get in trouble, or you weren't prosecuted, etc. But how did you become very successful inside an organization that was doing billions of dollars in illegal activity?
Sure. So there were he had two totally separate divisions, just so you know. Okay. He had a legitimate trading floor. They did what's called the third market. So in other words, they compete with the New York Stock Exchange for business. So when someone like Charles Schwab was a big player there, or TD Ameritrade before, they would go and they could put their order in. They could go to the New York Stock Exchange to buy or sell IBM, for example, or they can come to us. And Bernie Madoff had this brilliant idea. This is legal, by the way. He had what's called payment for order flow. So he would pay Charles Schwab and these other people like a penny a share. So rather than Charles Schwab going to the New York Stock Exchange, as an example, and paying them and paying the spread for their customers, they can go to Madoff. And in theory, the customers would get the same price they would on the New York Stock Exchange, but Bernie Madoff's company would pay a penny a share. So Charles Schwab would make money. We're talking millions and millions of shares. That's a lot of money. In those days, it was before stocks were traded in pennies. Stocks had a spread of 1/8 of a point, later a 1/16 of a point. So for those of you, 1/8 of a point is 12.5 cents spread. So if we were lucky and we bought stock on the bid and then sold some on the offer, right, we had a little bit of a cushion. And if we paid a penny on each side, we still had about a 10-cent profit margin on those trades. Now, of course, it's risky. Sometimes you sell the stock, it goes up, you lose money. This isn't risk-free. This is risk. And soon after I started trading, it went from 1/8 to a 1/16. So a 1/16 is now a little over 6 cents. So now the spread got tighter. So now a penny on each side, our profit margin is a little over 4 cents, right? If it was perfect. Any rate, but that business was legit. Bernie Madoff had been chairman of the NASDAQ. And this business was at one point valued probably close to $1 billion at its heyday. He did, about between 5 and 10% of the volume in the New York Stock Exchange. Okay. So that business, that's the business I saw that I worked in. That was real. That was legitimate. Okay. Now,
All right.
He had a separate business, which was on a totally different floor. So I was on the 19th floor. This business was on the 18th and 17th floor. Well, he had off 17th floor. And that business was supposedly basically an investment advisory business where he'd have very wealthy clients, give him money, and he would make returns for them. And apparently he was doing really, really well and very consistent returns. All right. So after being there 4, 5, 6 years, and I started making, I heard about this business and I was thinking, what do I want to do with my money? I'm trading all day. When I'm at night, I don't want to worry about doing that. I want something safe. I want to enjoy life. I want to play sports and have fun and do other things. So anyway, who better to trust than Bernie Madoff, the guy who runs my company, who, and the way he explained it to me, he said it was going to be very safe. Well, first he said he wasn't sure he would take my money. Of course, he made it like a big thing, almost like, remember the old days of Studio 54? It created what's called cognitive dissonance. Like they would create a long line. So it's really hard to get in. So if it's really hard to get in, then people think, wow, this must be an amazing place. So we really want to get in.
Yeah.
That's kind of what Bernie Madoff did. So he made me wait. Anyway, finally comes in, he puts his arm around me. Hey, all right, I'm going to like he's doing me a big favor, like a friendly uncle figure to me. All right, I'm going to let you invest, but look, I don't want you to tell the people because they're going to get jealous. I don't let many people in, and all this stuff. So he made it to keep it secret. not because he did anything wrong, but because he doesn't want other people to get jealous and then of me and being invest. So I started putting my money in his fund, and as I got decent returns, if I ever needed money to pay tax or whatever, the money always came out. So I built a trust with me, and I put more and more money in. And then I got married, had our first child, and I had made a lot of money. And for me, other people might be different. For me, money was a means to an end, not the means or not the end. All right. So by 2000, I was kind of burnt out. I was at that time 36. Our daughter, great daughter, but she had college. I wasn't sleeping much. It was my wife, but when she was pregnant, like morning sickness, afternoon sickness, evening sickness. So the point is, anyway, I was burnt out, and I thought I had enough money. So I walked in one day and said that I'm going to quit. I want to just enjoy life. And they were shocked. They kept thinking I was going to go to another firm, but so I gave them like 3 months, and I think I traded till that summer. And then I moved with my wife down to Virginia. And again, then life was going to be blissful because I had saved up millions of dollars in this safe hedge fund run by brilliant, trustworthy Bernie Madoff. And now I go down to Virginia and I play beach volleyball and get involved in environmental causes. I became a full-time fitness instructor, got every certification possible. Raising a family, life is great.
What year was that you came down to Virginia?
2000.
Okay, 2000. All right, so life's great. You're playing volleyball. I think you're rowing. You're climbing. By the way, let's talk about that wall behind you real quick. So
Sure.
Do you do pull-ups regularly?
I used to do a lot of pull-ups. I do pull-ups on the rock climbing wall.
Yeah.
When I did too many pull-ups, I got medial condylitis.
Yeah.
But I do some pull-ups. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. No, same thing. So shoulder problem, and I had to really lay off on pull-ups, which is tough for a career special operations person, but it's pretty cool. So so you came down here. You think your investments are safe. Did you start working right away, or what was your plan coming down here?
Yeah. So I was deciding. So yeah. Well, So one is I want to learn everything to know about fitness and personal training. So I got every certification possible from kickboxing. Cool. I did martial arts, got a black belt in Taekwondo. I got yoga instructor's license, group fitness instructor, incredible. Personal trainer from National Academy of Sports Medicine. I took extra courses. So I started training people, playing beach volleyball, kind of became a semi-professional poker player, would go out to casinos, play tournaments, and got involved in some environmental causes. Eventually I built this house.
Did you ever try counting cards?
Did I? Counting cards is more for blackjack. Blackjack is boring. I did a little bit of it, but I like poker. I never really liked blackjack that much.
Okay.
Because it's so repetitive. So the difference is
you strike me as somebody who would be good. I realize it's cheating when you count cards, but you seem like somebody who knows how to count.
Blackjack's repetitive, the same thing over. With poker, there's the psychological aspect. You got to read the player. There's so many more nuances in poker. So I personally find it more interesting.
All right, cool. Okay, so things are moving right along. You got nice, secure investments up in New York, and you're a fitness instructor, and you're rocking. And so your daughter, and did you have additional children at this time?
Yeah, my son. So I had a daughter and a son. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
My son was born in 2001, and
okay. What month in 2001?
He was born October 24th.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. After that fateful day in September. But so at what point did you realize, because the Madoff thing was on the news, like how did you first find out about his illegal activity? And then,
sure.
How did it, when and how did it dawn on you that, oh my God, I'm at risk here?
Yeah. So I'll never forget this. I was teaching a yoga class at the Great Neck Rec Center. And I was actually teaching two classes. First I was teaching like a fitness class, then a yoga class. And this is before
I got to ask you, does anybody in your yoga class know that they have a very successful super wealthy yoga teacher teaching them
Probably
yoga?
not. I'm very low. I didn't talk about
Yeah,
it. I'm
yeah,
very low
okay.
key. I mean, I wear a t-shirt and whatever. So,
Yeah, all
um,
right.
so yeah, no, I mean, obviously I'm not doing that for the money. So, I think I was getting paid $25 a class or something. So
Exactly.
anyway,
Yeah.
but it was great. So in between, so it was, I think, I don't remember the day. Was it a Thursday? It was during the week. I remember it was in November. And in between classes, I go to get a drink of water or something. And I had my phone off. I turned on my phone. This is before texting, by the way. This was 2008. So I turn on my phone and suddenly I'm blown up with all these voicemails. Like, what the heck? So first, I hope everything's okay with my family. Like literally, this is, nothing. And then I taught a class for whatever, an hour. So suddenly I got like 15 voice messages at least. It was like, what the heck? And all of a sudden I'm hearing these messages from friends of mine, acquaintances from New York City that I haven't heard from in many years. And they're all saying, Andrew, did you hear this? Bernie Madoff's arrested and all this stuff. Some of them laugh and they said, man, you're lucky you got out when you did. They don't know that I left millions of dollars with it. So I'm like,
Yeah.
what the heck? So suddenly I'm like, my heart, like, I'm like shocked. I'm like, what? All of a sudden I'm not such a rich guy anymore. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this is bad. And it's funny, I got to go back and teach a yoga class. And I'm looking at the messages and I'm stunned. And the one thing I thought, all right, you know what? I pay taxes all the time. So it won't be so bad. I'm going to get all my tax money back that I paid on gains that are didn't really have, and I'll be fine. So I teach, but it was hard. But I remember teaching that class was one of the hardest things. But I'm doing it, I'm with them, I'm teaching the class. I get home and my wife's there, and my wife's great. I knew she didn't marry me for my money because it's gone. She's like, what can I do to help? Do you want me to get a job or whatever? So she was great. She was supportive, and my kids are little. They don't really know what's going on. And so I was depressed for a while because then a few days later, I was the first one brave enough or stupid enough to go on CNBC, the Power Lunch, because I was, I talked about it. I talked about how I got, ripped off. I trusted Bernie. I liked him. I shared pictures of my time at Madoff, like at Chase Stadium playing baseball and all this other stuff. We used to have a softball game every summer against the Mets brass. I mean, I enjoyed my time there and it was a good life. And then I started hearing about this thing. So called the clawback. So this is what really infuriated me. It's one thing to lose all that money. All right. You lose them, you invest, you lose money. Okay. But I thought I'd get all that money back in taxes. Now there's a new thing called the clawback. And this is where they didn't care that took out money to pay money in taxes. The fact that I took out money, not only did I lose all the money, but whatever I took out more than I put in over the whole time, they want all that back. And so I thought it was really unfair. I mean, it's one thing if I didn't take money out to pay tax. I'm like, they said to me, look, Andrew, we know you did nothing wrong, but we can't get the money back from the government. We can get the money back from you. So
Wow.
not only did I lose all that money, but then I got subject to a clawback lawsuit. And I had to hire lawyers and pay legal fees, and that dragged on. So that really depressed me. And that dragged on to 2017. So I had this dark cloud over me for basically 9 years, from the end of 2008 to 2017, where I didn't know if I was going to be bankrupted. I mean, it was really unfortunate. I thought unfair. And, when I talked to lawyers, look, I'll tell you everything. Here's the statements. You can see I did nothing wrong. Why are you going after me? And again, it wasn't like personal. I think they just did it. They used me to set a precedent because there are bad actors who maybe didn't pay taxes or maybe took out a lot more money. I mean, certainly there were people that, abetted Madoff maybe, Any rate, that was a dark time. And finally, 2017 was all settled. And that was a relief. But yeah, I mean, when I started, I didn't have any gray hair, I had a full head. I definitely aged me.
So it all settled in 2017. So you've
Yeah.
had no interaction, no activity, no threats since then.
No. I mean, what's the threat to me? I mean, I'm threatened to call me an idiot for losing my money to Madoff. Yeah. So I mean, I tell. It's funny when I teach my students, I explain, look, I'm going to teach you the good things I did about Wall Street, and also some of the mistakes I made not to do. And I tell them I lost. I was a victim. I lost all that money, and could have been avoided.
Let's talk about your students in ODU. So, what year did you start teaching there, and how did that decision come about?
Yeah, so Old Dominion University. So I had taught back in like 2001. I taught some MBA classes, trading, and I enjoyed it. And so they remembered me. And then in 2011, they got an endowment from a guy named Greg Lumsden, who was a former ODU alum who made it big at Countrywide Credit before the 2008 debacle. He got his money out. Anyway, he donated a lot of money to build this Bloomberg trading room. And so they wanted someone who knew about trading and investing from the industry. And so they asked me if I'd be interested. And I said, of course. At that time, I was really worried about my future, and I didn't have health insurance. I was still being a fitness instructor, but I wasn't making much money. But anyway, so I went to ODU and interviewed. And I had no idea if I'd like it because and I even told the dean at the time, said, look, when I do things, I do it 100% or I don't like it. I said, I'm either going to be one of the best, instructors, lecturers, professors, whatever it leads to you'll ever have, or I'm going to quit in about 6 months. I'll let you know. And I'm still there. And, I've loved teaching. So I became the Bloomberg expert. When I went there, I learned all the nuances of how to use Bloomberg. And then so I wasn't even asked to teach initially. I was there to kind of become the Bloomberg expert, to show other professors how to use it, how to make this trading room useful, make it more attractive for students and faculty, and raise ODU's vision and so forth. But I started, that was easy. I wanted to do more, so I started creating classes. And so I created this class, Wall Street 101, and that became very popular. Now I have 2 sections of it, and it became a great class. I also now teach. I've taught other classes. I've taught derivative options classes and other classes, and I also teach the student managed investment fund, which we've built up. We started with 250,000. We have we've built it up to over 1.5 million now. And so I've loved, ODU's been great for me. I've love teaching there, love helping the students, love the atmosphere.
That's great. And so, are you full time there?
Yes, yeah, I'm full time. I
Okay.
started off as an instructor, then I got promoted to a lecturer, then a senior lecturer, then a master lecturer, then a teaching professor. And not only that, but of course I had to do more. So while there, I got my PhD I got my PhD while teaching full time.
Wow. So, because I in your bio it said non-tenured professor, I believe.
Yeah, right. So I'm not exactly. I literally just finished all my comps, everything for the PhD. And it's funny, tomorrow I'm doing my proposal defense. So I'm going to present it.
Ah.
So I'm what's called ABD. I have all but dissertation.
Okay. All right.
But yeah,
That's
but I've been getting my PhD, and it's fun.
Yeah. No, that is cool, and that's fun. And again, that's you're a master at time management to be able to do stuff like that. Do you still? So you teach these incredible courses, Stock Market 101, etc., or Wall Street 101. Do you still trade actively?
No, I do more investing. I do some trading. Yeah, I do. I most of my money is in long-term investments, but I do part for fun and part, it's interesting. I do some active trading. Yes.
Okay. And so along those lines, have you heard of these trade accounts? I think they're AI driven, and I can't think of the name. It's the one I hear on the radio all the time. They say they're going to teach you how to trade, they're going to establish your account, and they're going to give you $50,000 to put your account in motion. Are you familiar with this?
No, it sounds too good to be true. It probably is. I'm sure there's some catch. Nobody gives you just money for nothing. So
Yeah.
I'm sure
Yeah.
there's a catch to it.
Yeah.
And if it's
Okay.
so
All
good,
right.
why do they need? I mean, if AI is so good, why would they give you 50,000? Why don't they just do it themselves and not
Yeah.
waste the 50,000 if it's AI, if it's so good?
What is AI doing to the financial markets?
Well, it's a moving. The AI tools keep getting better and better. And like when I teach, I tell my students, look, use AI as much as you want, as long as you understand it. I always tell them, look, if I say something, feel free to check it with AI. If you disagree, let me know. And so like I've changed all my classwork to where they have to present. In other words, I don't want them giving me a written thing because they can have AI write it, right? But they've got to go up and explain it. So, so the AI tools are great for leveraging information, for making things more efficient, for helping you learn things. But AI can't, just like the best stock picker can't always pick the right stock. Neither can AI. I mean, there's a lot of intangibles, but AI, it can help you. Again, if you have like a disciplined, systematic approach, you can use an AI tool to help you do that, and it can help you go wrong. Like if you do an evaluation, like Nvidia, for example, is one of our big positions in our fund. And I tell students, do your analysis on Nvidia. Also, feel free to use AI. See what they say. What are some of the tools they recommend? Have AI check your analysis. Give you critique it. Before I do.
Okay. So there are ways to use it within the university that are acceptable.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's a fluid situation because it's changing so much. But look,
Sure.
I want my students to be successful in the real world. And when they get a job or whatever it is, if they're in Wall Street, and use every tool you can to get every edge you can. If AI is one of your tools, I mean, I look at AI as like having 10 assistants working for me 24/7 without paying or whatever. I pay $20 a month for
Yeah,
the
exactly.
advanced version. I mean, think about that. That's incredible. And they can do the research. Now, it's my job to check it. They've gotten better. ChatGPT could give you, they used to get, and Claude and Gemini, they're all similar, right? You can use whichever one. They might make a mistake and do something backwards, and you got to catch it. So I make sure to tell my students, look, if AI makes a mistake and you don't catch it, you're going to lose a lot of points. It's up to you to make sure that what they give you is accurate.
Wow. Okay. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. Really, not even in the coming years. It's in the coming weeks or months.
Yeah, it's changing rapidly.
Yeah, because it is changing so fast. Today is March 2nd, 2026. And 2 days ago, the U.S. essentially launched a significant military intervention in Iran. And I've been working on production most of the day and haven't really followed the stock market for today. But generally speaking, the oil markets are what people are concerned about with the Straits of Hormuz. And I've heard that China gets most of its oil from Iran. And if Iran chokes off the Straits of Hormuz, that's, doesn't benefit China whatsoever. Do you have any, from an economic standpoint or from a global security standpoint, do you have any observations or views there?
Yeah, so, I mean, generally the simple things are right. Oil prices in the short run go up. Oil companies benefit. I'm sure oil companies, Conoco, Exxon, et cetera, Oxy, they're all probably strong today. Defense contractors are going to do really well with this because, it makes them more important, more demand.
Yeah.
Airlines, travel will get hurt because they're going to lose a lot of revenue. There'll be a lot of airlines shut down, especially flying to the Middle East. But, it depends. So, but the stock market, remember, thinks long term, okay? So and again, we'll see what happens. If this war could be resolved without, big players like China and other thing getting involved, and if we get regime change and make Iran a better place with more productivity and a friendlier nation, that might benefit the world and the stock market, and the stock market could react positively to it. So, again, don't look at the knee-jerk reactions. It's the long run. It's the long run. The market does look at things long term. So, we're going to see what happens in the market. But I mean, when I looked at the market earlier, it wasn't a big deal. The market opened down, then came back. And if you look at the S&P 500 again, I haven't looked in a couple hours, but it was very tiny move. And so again, we will see what happens.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's anything to panic with there.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think so either. So throughout your career, throughout your life, really, I mean, you've just really in the last 45 minutes or so, from your childhood to present day, you've outlined, I would say, a pretty incredible life, pretty active life. Moments of high risk, high reward, etc. And you led teams along the way. And I just, my question is, what is your take on leadership? What have you seen have you developed a personal philosophy when it comes to leadership, and what does that word mean to you?
Yeah. So, the main thing when I look at leadership is to, first of all, leadership by example. I think if you want people to follow you, you've got to set the high standards that people want to follow you. If you're in the military and you make sure you're always on time and you work hard to become the best shooter, the best helicopter pilot, whatever it is, right? You put the work in, that'll give you respect and that'll help you become a leader. If you make the right decisions, if you communicate well and understand, if you have people working for you, it's important to understand what are their motivations and everything so that you can motivate them to be the best that they can be, with whatever tools that is. And of course, humans are all different. That's the challenging thing with it. Some people need, different types of motivation. Although I must say, though, I personally think, positive motivation is generally better than like fear or intimidation, I think, in the long run. I mean, certainly as a teacher, I always I tell my students, look, when I say something, feel free to disagree. Let's have an open discussion about it. So I think it's, again, leadership by setting the right example, putting in the really hard work, being in tune and listening, being a great listener, understanding the people you work for or your colleagues or whoever else so that you can help serve their needs the best.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, good. All right, last question. And I know you have a busy schedule to get on with, so take as long or as little as you want with this final question. But what haven't I asked you? What else is there that you want to share with my listeners?
Okay, well, I would say for those of you, and again, I don't know the age or what you're doing, but the big thing is follow your passion. Like if you're young and you're looking for a job, think about the long run. And the long run is doing something that you really enjoy doing. Don't think about, don't accept a job because it pays $5,000 more. Accept the job because you enjoy it, you're going to be passionate about it, then you'll do better in the long run. Oh, think about long run decisions like I sacrificed part of my, I sacrificed going out a lot to make sure to finish my MBA, and then it paid off down the road. So, be willing to sacrifice in the short run for long-term gain.
Love it. So I think when we edit this episode, we're going to close out with the Eagles in the long run. So, so Andrew Cohen, listen, I really appreciate you coming on. It's taken a while for us to make this happen, but I appreciate your diligence and what you're doing now, and I wish you all the best in the future.
Great talking to you, Bob, and all your listeners. My pleasure.